So I've been thinking over the last several weeks about the perfect gift for each of you. I know you pretty well. And I came up with, I think, would be a gift that everyone here would just thoroughly enjoy. And that is a Craftsman bandsaw. How do you, Gina, good? Young people, Ray? I mean, but I kind of detect by the reaction that maybe that wouldn't really strike each of you. But you know what? I've had a Craftsman bandsaw that I loaned to a friend several years ago. He decided he didn't need it anymore, and I gave it to my son a couple weeks ago, and you would have thought it was the best gift I ever gave to my son. He has sent me videos of him using it. He has sent me text messages, and every time he sees me, he says, "Dad, this is just the most awesome gift ever," and I'm just so happy that he enjoys that. So I thought, well, really, I knew that you probably wouldn't like the Craftsman bandsaw, so I thought maybe a pitch pipe. Now my eyes are rolling and I'm laughing because I'm thinking, who needs a circular harmonica? Really? What would I do with a circular harmonica? The point I'm trying to make here is that gift giving is a challenging endeavor. If you're really serious about it, if you're really committed, and this would be my wife, really committed to get the exact right gift for someone, then you cannot spend enough time. You cannot give it enough thought. Because you're thinking about, is it going to fit? Is it the right color? Am I spending too much? Am I not spending enough? Is it going to be something that they've never had before that they'll always use? Is it going to be just the right gift for that person? Gift giving is always challenging. But what encourages me is we've been thinking about hope. We've been thinking about the gifts that God gives us. That when it comes to gifts that really matter, not just the Christmas or birthday, but the gifts that really matter about the way life is unfolding for us, it is good to know that God is the perfect gift giver. He never misses. It does not matter your age, your gender, it does not matter your ethnic background, it does not matter your education, your job, it does not matter where you live. God always has a perfect gift for everyone without question. In James chapter 1, verse 17, James writes, every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of the heavenly lights. Think about just those perfect gifts. I think about nature. This past week, Gwen and I were up in Colorado for a few days. Steve and Carolyn were over in New Mexico in the mountains for a few days. And so Steve and I were texting back and forth about just the wonders of what we were seeing. And he texted, nature is beautiful and breathtaking. And that is so true. Appreciated by everyone. You think about the gift of this book, this amazing book that we call the Bible. But it's not the only book that's ever been written. I'm a big Clive Cussler fan. I love Clive Cussler books. I've probably read over half the books that he's written. But I can tell you one thing. Once I've read it, I set it aside, and I never intend to read it again. But that is not true with God's book. Every time I read it, it's better than the last time. It just keeps getting better. And it's for everyone in every nation. You think about the gift of life itself. How amazing is that? You think about the gift of Jesus. And then the one that we introduced on Easter Sunday that we'll continue talking about today in the next 2 weeks. It is the absolute perfect gift for the human condition. The absolute perfect gift for the human condition. And this last year has really demonstrated to us, maybe more than any other time in our lives, just how valuable this gift is. But as I suggested to you 2 weeks ago, it's always a valuable gift to talk about. Not just on the heels of a pandemic, but of course we're talking about hope. More than just a feel-good emotion. It's not just supposed to prompt this little silly, goofy smile on our face because we have this hope. It's so much more than just wishful thinking. In the Greek, the word hope means it's a desire of something good. A desire of something good with an expectation of obtaining it. It's not just something you're hoping for with the idea, well, maybe, maybe not. But there's an absolute expectation of obtaining it. And God has written the book on what that hope looks like. Romans chapter 15, I would call it just like Our Hope is a Cornerstone is a song that Kyle is leading that has been kind of our theme song. The theme verse for this series comes from Romans chapter 15, verse 13. May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you trust in him, so that you may overflow with hope by the power of the Holy Spirit. I don't believe there's any book that has ever been written that has more wisdom, that has more inspiration about hope than God's Word. And you know, when you think about an individual who has shared some words of hope that may be the most unlikely of sources, there's an individual who comes to mind. And I guess the way I would describe to him being an unlikely source would be kind of like if I told you that I've been working on writing a book on song leading. That should also generate healthy laughter. Because there is no way I would ever write a book, much less read a book, on song leading. Now, Kyle, that's different for him. But this is an individual on a more serious note that you might think of all people that probably would not even want to dare touch that subject of hope, because during the last few days of Jesus' life, just before his crucifixion, things were not hopeful for this individual. This is not an individual you would think was just filled with hope. But of course, we're talking about Peter. He can't believe that Jesus is going to go to Jerusalem and die, and he lets him know. He can't believe that Jesus would not think that, Jesus would even think for a moment that he would deny him, and yet he did. Time after time after time during those last few days, you think that Peter is one who is not feeling hope, and yet when you look at what he writes about hope, passage that Martin read, and another verse we read in 1 Peter chapter 1. This is an individual who really understood and appreciated hope because he had been on totally opposite depth of despair in the valley of total, complete sense of abandonment. This is an individual who came firsthand and foremost seeing the importance of hope. Look at 1 Peter chapter 1, verses 3 and 4 again. In 1 Peter 1, when he says, "Praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. In his great mercy, he has given us new birth into a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead, and into an inheritance that can never perish, spoil, or fade. This inheritance is kept in heaven for you." Notice how dramatic, how forceful, how forthright Peter is about describing this hope. He doesn't say that, boy, isn't this a great hope? He said this is a living hope. Because Peter has experienced it as we have at times in our lives when we have had hope for something that did not come to pass. And we gave up on it. Peter wants us to know that this is a living hope that should thrive within our hearts. God has given us that new birth. It isn't just a difference maker. It really makes all the difference. It really makes all the difference. You see, what we need to understand about hope is that it's not a take it or leave it proposition. It's not a take it or leave it option. It's kind of like dessert, although some probably would argue that it's absolutely essential to a good diet. But it's not like just saying, well, you can kind of take it or leave dessert. And I saw someone grinning back there. So I know that she loves dessert. But I know that sometimes I think we believe that hope is one of those things that if I acquire it sometime, that's good. If other times I lose it, that's fine. Hope is so essential to healthy living. It isn't just a feel-good expression. It's essential to physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual living. See, true spiritual hope isn't merely wishful thinking or crossing your fingers. About 20 years ago, I remember I was working on a project, and my computer, don't even ask me what it's doing right now. Don't even ask me. I frustrate my son to no end when I'm dealing with computers, because I'll say something like, boy, the other day, Jared, my computer just locked up on me. I have no idea what it was, but I got it going again. He said, well, what'd you do, Dad? What'd you do, Dad? I just unplugged it. Just unplugged it. And he just gets infuriated with me when I do things like that, because there's supposed to be all these programs and things you go through. But I was very frustrated. I was almost on the point of just taking a computer and just chucking it out the window. And I was on the 7th floor of a building. And this computer whiz comes to see me one morning. And he is determined that he is going to get this thing running because I have a project that's due the next day. And this is not just something that would be nice to have. This is going to be absolutely essential for me to be able to do this project. And I'll never forget this. He was working on this thing, doing his little keystroke things. I mean, it had to be for like 2 or 3 hours going on this. And then he looks at me and he says, "Well, you ready?" And I said, "Well, is it going to work?" And he just does this. He just picks up his 2 fingers and crosses those 2 fingers. And you know, that just instilled so much confidence in me. I thought, oh, this is so good, you know, because I couldn't do that. I mean, you know, I remember thinking at the time, wow, hope and wishful thinking are not even in the same universe. They're not even in the same arena. And so I want us to understand as we look at hope, that hope is more than just merely thinking that, well, maybe it'll happen soon, maybe it won't. God says you have a living hope. One of the most powerful passages that I appreciate comes in Jeremiah chapter 29. In Jeremiah chapter 29, this is what God says. "For I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you." And then get this. Plans to give you hope and a future. "Then you will call on me and come and pray to me, and I will listen to you. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart." I don't know why that passage just warms my heart. This is God writing to his children when they are in exile, and they think that all is lost, and he says, you know, I've got plans for you. My plan is for you to have hope. My plan is for you to have a future. And we're going to circle back around and look at something in Zechariah in just a few minutes that just kind of brings it all together. But knowing that this God of hope has plans for hope for us, and yet when I stop and think about it, I think, why would God not want us to be people of hope? I mean, why wouldn't he? Haven't we been created in his image? And if he is the God of hope and we're created in his image, would it be so strange to think that he would want us to be people of hope? Absolutely. In the book Hope Rising, this is what the author writes. If we embrace the language of hope, we will talk differently, act more intentionally, and live our lives with greater purpose than we have ever lived before. Such great words. People of hope that is obvious in our language, in our thoughts, in the way we interact with people. So what is that like? What does that really look like? What is this gift of a living hope that God has given to each of one of us when that's on full display? What exactly does that look like? You know, I kind of alluded to it earlier. I don't think that it's just a smile. I don't think it's just an extra bounce in your step. I don't think it's just being called a naturally optimistic person. We're going to see in a couple of weeks that optimism and having high hope are not necessarily the same things. But what does this hope look like that not only those around us see, but God in heaven also sees? That God in heaven also sees. And so there are just 4 things I want to mention. And that's the most complicated theological term I could describe to enumerate these is things. These are just 4 things. I guess maybe I should say 4 truths. It might sound like it belongs more in a sermon. But these are 4 things that I think characterize people who have living hope on full display in their lives. And I'm not talking about every moment of every day, but basically our temperament. Colossians chapter 1 would enumerate the first one. We have heard of your faith in Christ Jesus and to the love you have for all God's people, the faith and love that spring from the hope stored up for you in heaven. I would say that if you're going through a faith crisis, if you're going through a love crisis, it may really have more to do with where your hope is placed than anything else. There's nothing worse than misplaced hope. And we'll talk about that next week. But having our hope firmly placed in the God of hope and in his promises allows for our faith and love to be deeper and broader and more meaningful to people. So the first thing that I would say is when God sees us having hope-filled lives, then God sees people whose faith is growing with every day, whose love is deepening every day. Faith and love are products of a deep, meaningful hope. The second thing comes from 1 Peter chapter 3. Again, this extraordinary source of an individual who's talking about hope, who's gone through some rough times. Here he is in 1 Peter chapter 3, and listen to what he says. But in your hearts, revere Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you why you go to church. No. Who asks you why you pray before every meal. No. Who asks you why you read the Bible every day. No. And there's certainly nothing wrong with all those things. No, he says, be prepared to give an answer to all people for the hope that you have. For the hope that you have. If we're living hope-filled lives, people are going to ask why. Why? I mean, there's so much to despair of in this life. You're entitled to despair. You're entitled to pity parties. You're entitled to hanging it up and saying, really? What's the point? But he says, people will take notice of you when hope is on full display in your life. Believe me, they will. Believe me, they will. And they'll want to know why. They'll want to know why. Romans 12:12, the third one, Paul just simply says, be joyful in hope. Be joyful in hope. When we find this living hope, when we embrace this living hope, and we let that just kind of permeate our very being, that results in joy. Because there's nothing to compare with the hopes and the promises that God makes to us. So it leads to joyful living. And then from Psalm 147, verse 11, this thought, which really intrigued me. The Lord delights. The Lord delights in those who fear him, who put their hope in his unfailing love. The people that are sitting here in this auditorium with you, the people that you're going to be interacting with throughout this upcoming week are not the only audience to your life. They're not the only spectators. They're not the only ones who are observing you and hopefully asking, why do they have that hope? Why do they seem to be so joyful? What is about that faith that seems to permeate their very language? But God in heaven is also more than just a casual observer, a very interested observer. And God takes such delight when he sees us placing our hope in him and his unfailing love. You see, I don't know about you, but I was thinking about gifts again this past week and the proper reaction to receiving a gift, even if it isn't the right one, is gratitude. When I was in elementary school, basically about 1st through 5th grade, my Aunt Helen, who lived in Toronto, Canada, who worked for the Metropolitan Library in Toronto, every Christmas, without exception, every Christmas she would send my brother and my sister and me pajamas. That was the gift. And so every year there was the joke, I wonder what Aunt Helen sent us this year. And we kind of say, it was pajamas. And I can promise you, they were always way too small, or way too big, or just like, really? Aunt Helen, you would think I would wear those? Now, the exception was my 3rd grade year, in 3rd grade, because she sent me some Beverly Hillbilly PJs. I had a Beverly Hillbillies lunch pail, so it was perfect. I mean, it matched perfect. It was so cool, you know. But you know, in 3rd grade, what do you think? But here's the point I was making. Even though it really wasn't, you know, something that we just died to get, but every year, when my Aunt Helen would come to visit after Christmas, my parents would always tell me 2 things, boys and girls, 2 things. You're gonna wear those PJs when she comes, and you're gonna say thank you. Now, I don't mean any pun by this, but we need to wear hope on our sleeves. We need to wear that hope on our sleeves, and we always need to be grateful for that hope. we always need to be thanking God for that hope that we have. You see, next week and the week after, we're going to talk about what happens when that hope just seems to be so difficult to grasp. And we're going to be able to find out that it's perfectly natural. It's not going to be something that you have the right to beat yourself up over. It's a perfectly natural thing. But there's something about that hope that needs to continue to gravitate, and we'll see that. And so you wear that, you wear those PJs, you wear that hope, and you say thank you, and you show gratitude. If we hope, there's that word, if we hope to make a difference in the world, then we need to be hope-filled, Christ-centered, love-driven, and faith-based people. It's not going to be because of what we do for an hour on Sunday morning that's going to make the difference in the world in which we live. Trusting completely in God and in his promises, believing in his word, is the ultimate foundation. We cannot spend enough time in this book. There is a direct correlation between how deep your sense of hope is and how much time you spend in this book. And you know, if we could be these hope-filled, Christ-centered, love-driven, faith-based people, imagine the spiritual breath of fresh air that will be for the people of this world who are mired down in negativity, in anger, in fear, in hatred, in self-centeredness. This world needs a breath of fresh air. And God says, I offer a living hope that can do that. But be my ambassadors. Be the ones who speak that language of hope. In Zechariah 9, I mentioned to you earlier that what's so awesome about the Bible is that every time you read it, it just gets better. And I say, you know, every time I read it, it's amazing. You think, sometimes I just think, surely there's not going to be anything new under this sun. Surely I will have seen this before. But Zechariah 9 has a powerful thought, and it's just been consuming me. I just think it's just so on point about everything that we've been talking about when it comes to hope. But in Zechariah chapter 9, this is what happens in verse 9. In Zechariah 9, let me give you just a quick background. The people of Israel are in another time of total gloom and doom. Woe is me, because they are surrounded by nations that have been oppressing them. They've been surrounded by nations that are doing all these detestable things, and they've been living the ultimate pity party for quite some time. Woe is us. Woe is us. We would never do that, I'm sure. But God says to them in Zechariah chapter 9 and verse 9, Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Shout, daughter of Jerusalem. See, your king comes to you, righteous and having salvation, gentle and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. That's an amazing messianic prophecy right there. God is saying, I know you're feeling oppressed. I know you're feeling sorry for yourself. I know you can't believe that these things are happening. But let me give you, in the midst of this, a message of hope. Your king is coming. He's talking about Jesus. Your king is coming. So family, I would say, our king has come and is coming again. That is the ultimate message of hope. And then these are the words that I just thought, wow, I don't think I've ever seen these before, and I hope they grip you like they've been gripping me, because it just occurs to me that this is something that I need to be thinking about more in my life as far as my hope. And that's in Zechariah chapter 9, verse 12, when he says, Return to your fortress, O prisoners of hope. Now think about that. Think about the things that imprison our world. Just think about the things that imprison our world. We are prisoners to anxiety. We are prisoners to fear. We are prisoners to peer pressure. We are prisoners to low self-esteem. We are prisoners to bitterness. We are prisoners to self-centeredness. The list goes on and on and on. And Zechariah says, hold on there. I want you to return to your fortress. Return to your stronghold. That's God. Find your God of hope again. And I want you to become imprisoned to hope. Isn't that an amazing thought? That we should be prisoners of hope. And I never want to be released from that imprisonment. I never want it to be said that one day that I have given up on that hope. That hope has not made all the difference in my life. Because I know if I'm convicted of that, that will make a difference in the way you see God as you see me, or as I see God as I see you. So Zechariah says, find God again. Become imprisoned to the hope that he promises. Romans chapter 15, verse 13. May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you trust in him, so that you may overflow with hope by the power of the Holy Spirit.